Welcome to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher, where we take you behind the scenes with peak performers to learn what makes them tick and discover how you can apply their lessons to your life. I'm your host, Molly Fletcher. College football season is here, and the Auburn Tigers once again have high expectations, in large part due to today's guest, head coach Gus Malzahn. Gus stormed onto the national scene in his first year as head coach at Auburn in 2013, orchestrating one of the biggest turnarounds in college football history. He inherited a team that didn't win a single SEC game the previous season, yet somehow led the Tigers to an SEC championship and an appearance in the national title game. Known for being hyper-focused and unafraid of taking risks, Gus has led the Tigers to a 45-22 record at Auburn in his 5 years as head coach. On today's episode, we talk about how he was able to turn around the program so quickly, the importance of consistency and discipline, and how he embraces the high expectations. Here's my conversation with Gus Malzahn. Okay, Coach, so I hear you have a new addition to your title, Grandpa, which is pretty awesome. Tell me about that.
Yeah, that is a pretty neat deal. My oldest daughter, Kylie, had me and Chrissy's first grandson. I guess it was a little over 4 weeks ago, and we were fortunate enough to be there when she had it, and it was a real special moment. And of course, my wife, Christy, I've not seen her much since then, but she's a real proud grandma, too.
Oh, I bet. Well, congrats to that. Congrats to that. So let me ask you this. If I asked any of your guys to describe your coaching style or maybe your leadership style, what do you think they'd say?
Oh, wow. I would probably say focused, intense. I love what I do. And, I just think those are two things that I try to consistently, put in front of them. And, just knowing that our players, my hope is that they know that, their head coach is giving them their best every day.
And I know you're real structured and super routine-oriented. So how do you sort of protect your time and your priorities in a role where you've got a lot coming at you and like you said, you're focused? So from a structure and routine perspective, what does that look like for you on a daily basis to protect your time?
Yeah, you just said it. I mean, I'm the type that I'm a big routine guy. And, especially during the season, I've got it mapped out where every day, starting at 6 a.m., that's when I start, and I'll get home around midnight, during the season. And between 6 and midnight, I've got it mapped out and try to do the exact same thing every segment throughout the day. And that really helps me. Now in the off season, I've got a little more balance and, the flexibility is a little bit better with everything that goes with it. But during the season, it's full tilt.
But as a coach, I know you've got stuff that happens that changes your day probably, right? You got a kid that has a problem or a challenge or a coach that's got an issue. How do you deal with that? Because I'm sure you get some curveballs too. Yeah,
there's no doubt. And I think you just adjust as you go. And of course, this is college football, especially in the SEC, is a big-time business. And so there's things that do come up, throughout the day. And, you just deal with them in a timely manner and try to be as efficient as you can.
Yeah, no question. Well, so let's jump into Auburn a little bit. You were the offensive coordinator for 3 seasons, and then, you had 1 year at Arkansas State before coming back as the head coach in 2013. Tell me a little bit about why Arkansas, and what did you learn in that year that maybe better prepared you for the head job?
Yeah, I was the offense coordinator here at Auburn from 2009 to 11, and of course we were very fortunate. We recruited Cam Newton, got a chance to coach him. We won the national championship in 10, and after that season I started getting the head coaching itch and almost took a job or two, decided to stick around one more year, just felt like the timing wasn't right. And then Arkansas State job opened up, and of course my buddy Hugh Freeze was the head coach there the year before, and he went to Ole Miss, and I knew they had some talent, and I had a really good idea of what I was getting into. And then the fact that, I coached high school football for 15 years in the state of Arkansas, so really felt like I could recruit there, felt like I could win there, and it was really the perfect job for me, as far as being a head coach at the college level for the first time. And it really allowed me to really focus, on the football aspect and grow as a head coach. And because it's tough in this league,
sure,
you have major growing pains in the SEC to be a first-time head coach, and that gave me a great foundation. Just being a head coach at this level, and then, of course, like you said, the next year came right back to Auburn.
Wow. So, and then you had, of course, Cam Newton. You mentioned. What did you see in him? I mean, what do you think makes him different and sort of special that you saw in him? And of course, he's continued to progress to the next level.
Yeah, when we recruited him, we knew he was very talented. But at that time, he wasn't the Cam Newton we know today. I mean, he was just a very talented young man. But what I found is he was so coachable and allowed me to coach him hard. Never questioned anything. Just had that coach mentality. And then just his passion for the game. He is a great competitor. I mean, when you go in that arena, he was the one in charge, and everybody followed him. And, we had a magical season, and he led us to a championship.
Sure. And in your first year as head coach, you led one of the biggest turnarounds in college football, right? And the team was, I think, 3-9 the season prior. What were the things that you did when you first got there to really start that turnaround? And how'd you get these guys to see and believe in your vision so that they could follow you?
Yeah, that was a unique thing for me that I was here the year before. And, we actually won our bowl game when I left Arkansas State. And then 11 months later, I got a chance to come back. So I think the fact I was familiar with the players, that was a definite plus. One thing we got in when our staff got here, we said, hey, we're not going to worry about anything from last year. I don't want you to watch any film. I don't want you to listen to anybody's preconceived ideas of what happened the year before. Everybody's going to have a fresh start. And so that was really the way we looked at it. And our theme that year was, it's a new day. So I just felt like that, from the get-go, we had to set the standard. We had to get them close, and there's nothing better than straining players and be demanding on players and bring that team closer together. And it was a process. The very first year, we started out, and we were a solid team. We found ways to win, and we got better throughout the season, and we were playing our best football at the very end of the year, when very few were. So it was one of those magical seasons that it was really fun to be a part of.
Sure. What are some of the things you did, right? No film. What else sort of did you do to really turn that page, not just for yourself, but for every single guy walking through those doors?
Yeah. We just say, here's the standard. Here's what's going to be accepted. And we were very consistent with that standard. And we lost a few, and it wasn't for everybody. And we kind of knew that, and that was part of the plan. And like I said, our plan too was to strain our guys, to find out what was in them, and try to get that out of them on the practice field before you head to the arena on Saturdays. And so that was a really close group by the time we got to the season. And, and two, we had to set some goals. And, we started setting our goals that, hey, we've got to let's win the first one. Let's get the first SEC win, because they were 0-8 the year before. Mm-hmm. And then after that, it was just, if we get better each week, then everything else will take care of itself. And so that was our approach.
Did you change some things in the locker room and in the fitness and training rooms? Did you do some things physically too, so that it felt different physically?
Yeah, I'm one of those guys that likes everybody looking the same, acting the same, being a true team. Mm-hmm. We were just there was no gray area. If you're supposed to have your shirt tucked in, your shirt was tucked in. Mm-hmm. If you're supposed to jog on the field, you're going to jog on the field. If you're not supposed to walk, you're not supposed. So really, it was just all the little things, as far as what I say is the positives of discipline, and just being consistent with it. And, having, strict penalties if they don't meet them. And so it was just more of a foundation in every area. It wasn't just the strength and conditioning. It wasn't just the coaches. It wasn't just the classroom. It was just really the overall approach of being a winner and doing the little things that it takes to win a championship.
What would you do when you had a guy that maybe wasn't buying in, right? That wasn't maybe doing the running on the field, wasn't tucking in their shirt, wasn't doing the little stuff that you were preaching? How much grace did you give them? How did that work?
Well, yeah. When you set the standard, you've got to be consistent, and you got to have the consequences. The consequences were very well defined, and we took care of it right then. And if they didn't like it or didn't respond like we wanted, then they were doing something else. And so it was just a really standpoint of, here's our standard. If you're going to be a part of this team, we're fixing to do something special. And if you're going to be a part of it, then you're going to meet the standard. And if not, this isn't for everybody. And you've got to be willing to set that standard and be consistent. It doesn't matter if it's your best player, worst player, most talented, least talented, it doesn't matter. Everybody's going to have the same standard. And like I said, we lost a couple, but that's okay. Being a part of something special isn't for everyone, but it's just making sure that you set the standard and you stick to it.
Sure. How would you describe kind of the culture that you've created, and what were some of the things that you did to do that? Yeah,
I'd say right now our culture is very healthy. I'm very proud of our culture. We've got a lot of kids that, have unbelievable character. They truly care about their future, not just on the field, but off the field. I think we've had the least off the field issues of anybody in our league, the last 5 years. I'm very proud of that. And now a lot of that has to do with the kids you recruit too. We don't just let anybody in our program, and we're a little bit different than some colleges. And of course, we worked extremely hard for the last 5 years to get our culture like it is today, and I'm very proud of it. I've been responsible for 120 players, and I can lay down at night and not worry about getting a phone call in the middle of the night. And I'd say very few head coaches, in college football can say that.
Well, and you've got a great staff, right? I mean, tell me a little bit about how you, as a leader, picked the guys around you to help push that down. And
yeah, I think who you hire is probably one of the biggest decisions you make as a head coach of being successful. And I wanted to surround myself with, first of all, really good people that truly care about players more than what they can do on the field in college football. And, what we really try to do is push that business side of college football off to the side and really focus on the personal relationships. And we got a staff that does that. And what I'm proud of is they're great examples for our players. Coaches have great influence.
No question.
In college is no different. And so what a great husband looks like, what a great dad looks like. And that's my number one responsibility, for our players, to put coaches that'll do that. And we're fortunate enough that we do have a staff here that gets that. I think stability-wise right now in college football, we only lost one coach last year. And, our coaches really like each other. And so we think we got a good thing going with the staff.
I want to take a minute and thank Belay for sponsoring today's podcast. As a busy leader, I know how easily you can get caught in the day-to-day tasks. Belay offers 5-star virtual assistant services, virtual bookkeeping, and payroll services to churches, nonprofits, and businesses. Their virtual staffing model provides leaders a new option for delegating important roles, freeing themselves and others to focus on the strengths that provide the greatest impact to their organization. And we have an exclusive offer for our listeners to take 50% off their startup costs for any Belay service by visiting belaysolutions.com/Molly Fletcher. What are some of the things you do system-wise as a leader with your staff to keep that communication, continuity, consistency, to help them push down the vision that you all have collectively, clearly embraced to really thread through the entire organization?
Yeah, I think it's all about communication. I mean, I think it's all about, the standard from a head coach's standpoint. And, when I hired these guys, that was part of it. Very transparent, very upfront on the expectations. And, but it's just constantly communicating and making sure we spend time with our players. There's nothing like time. And truly spending that one-on-one time with our players to ask how their life's doing, to know more about them than what they're doing on the field. And so really it's more about communication and and keeping that in front of our coaches too.
Tom Izzo was a client of mine forever, and that's one of the things Tom talks about is time. And it's fun to hear you say that same thing too, because he would do all that extra stuff like you do, right? Pick guys up at their dorm room and drive around and spend time with them after they've had a tough game, right? So there's
no doubt. I think back when I took this job, I had one of our former players here at Auburn, very high-profile guy, said, "Coach, make sure your players can touch you. Make sure that your door's open where they can communicate with you every day when they need something." And that really stood out to me, and it really put things in perspective, before, it's probably the first week that I took this job.
Yeah. Now, so is your staff in there at 6 a.m. and leaving at midnight too, man?
I usually get here a little earlier than, what happens. Our coordinators usually get here around 7, and I give them some flexibility, as far as just getting their job done. But, I've been doing this same thing for a long time, and, that way I can make sure and do what I need to do. And, of course, I've got that thing in me that I got that fear of people outworking me too. And so, that has something to do with it too.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think's the best advice maybe you've gotten as a coach, as a man, as a husband, as a father, that's helped you be the kind of man you are, the kind of leader you are?
Well, just as far as being a man and a leader, I mean, I've got some great friends out there. Ronnie Floyd, the pastor in Springdale, Arkansas, is one of my mentors as far as spiritual mentors, and just an example of, what a great dad looks like, what a great husband looks like. Now, as far as football goes, probably one of the best advice I got when I was coaching high school. The first 5 years I was at a place called Hughes High School, and I never got a chance to learn under anyone. And I was a head coach my second year, and so I met with a veteran coach in the state of Arkansas, very successful, and I said, I need some advice. And he said, well, how many plays do you have on offense? I said, oh, Coach, we can run anything, 100, 200. He said, well, here's what I would tell you. Pick your 4 or 5 plays out and focus on those and get where you can run them perfect no matter what the defense does. And then once you can do that, then you go ahead and add one more. And that was really probably the best advice that I've got from a foundation philosophy standpoint, because I really believe that if you're going to have a chance to be great or a chance to win championship, you got to be the best at something and, be an expert in something rather than just be good at a lot of different things. And I think that holds true in life, not just football, but that really was a turning moment, in my philosophy as far as coaching.
Mm-hmm. No question. What do you think's the one thing you wish you maybe knew earlier in your career, that you maybe know now and you reflect on and go, man, I wish I would have known this when I got this head job, or when, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Experience and wisdom. I mean, that's just part of it going through, but looking back, I mean, probably just the balance. I wasn't real balanced, and I've got to fight the balance even now, but just kind of looking back that, during my free time, I wouldn't have played golf as much. I'd spend a little more time with my girls, and that's probably the one thing that if I could go back, I would definitely spend more time with my family. The selfishness part of free time is something I'm not real proud of, but that's what I would do.
Well, it sounds like you're a little bit out of balance, candidly, during the season, but you need to do that because you know it works. How do you recalibrate in the off season to sort of get that back, right, for your family and for yourself?
Yeah, there's no doubt. Once the season's over, and really once recruiting's over, that's when I really catch my breath. And, me and Christy, we spend a lot of time together and get a chance to spend a lot of time, in the off season with my girls, and really try to make them a part of what I'm doing here too. And that's really worked well, not just in the off season, but even during the season.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been a real good thing in the off season.
When you look back at your career and you look at where you are now and the success you've had, both, as a person and as a leader and as a coach, I'm sure your leadership style has evolved a little bit. I'm sure your values are right. They're still there, and they're the same probably, but maybe the way that you do what you do has evolved. How has it evolved? And, maybe it's something that our listeners can grab to sort of fast forward their ability to continue to evolve and get better.
Yeah, probably the biggest thing is delegating and trust. When I was in a small high school, the first 10 years I was a coach and did everything. And, and then backing off. And anytime you're successful doing something, it's hard to change. But as I get older and the more that, I feel a lot more freedom to delegate and just empower the people around me and set the standard and all that and just turn them loose. And so that's probably the biggest growth, from my leadership style.
And so that's backed into by hiring the right kind of guys and the right staff, creating the trust, and then you can hand it off.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So, there's so much pressure in the SEC, no question, right? So how do you, as a coach, handle those expectations and pressure that comes with being a part of the SEC, being the head coach at Auburn? How do you deal with that pressure?
Well, that's part of the job description. As far as a place like Auburn, Auburn expects to win championships.
Sure.
And I've always wanted to be at a place that expected to win championships. And that's just part of it. And the goals and the standards high, but boy, that's really what you want. And as far as, the pressure, the highs are high and the lows are low in this college football, especially in the SEC. And you just got to understand that. And you got to stay focused. You can't get too high. You can't get too low. Stay focused. Keep working, and do everything you can to help your kids be successful.
Are you more of a process guy, right? Do you, I know that there's coaches that really don't talk much about winning. They talk about the process that it takes to do that. Where's your head at regarding that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I believe in setting goals high. I believe in putting it out there, man, that, we're going to win championships. We're going to shock the world. And, I've got that dreamer mentality. And I want my players to have that dreamer mentality. And so I think that's where it starts. And then you got to have a plan of how you're going to do it.
Sure.
And my experience is people get excited. Kids get excited. Coaches get excited anytime you dream. Everybody wants to dream. And you keep that in front of them on a daily basis. My experience is people are going to work harder. They're going to be more excited when they come to work. They're going to be more excited when they work out. And you constantly keep that goal in front of them. And you don't always reach goals, but that's part of life. Dealing with adversity and not reaching goals, that's part of growing. And I just think the people that don't set their goals high enough, the fear of failure people, I don't think they can ever be as good as they can be. So, that's kind of my process, which is a process throughout the whole thing. And, that's what I like to do.
How do you keep reminding the guys of the goals, right? Like, what's your system to keep those out in front of them so that they see them daily and keep dreaming and seeing the vision? Yeah,
we have it around the complex every single day. Our strength coach will be talking about it before every workout. The people in the training room will be talking about, all of our coaches will be talking about every team meeting. I'm going to put it in front of them. Every staff meeting, I'm going to say it to my coaches because really I'm trying to inspire them. It's just as much as inspiring my coaches as it is my players because they're going to be the ones, the extension of me. And so it's just a matter of, hey, you keep it in front of them, you keep that dream, you keep that vision in front of them, and, they work harder.
What do you do after a really tough loss? What does that look like? Like, get me inside of your head, your heart, the way you lead after a tough loss.
Yeah, well, the first thing, every loss is a little bit different, okay? You got to evaluate where your team's at. But, the big thing you have to do is find a point and truly put that in the rearview mirror. And as far as and it starts with the coaches. Really, it starts with me. And then it's got to be the coaches, and then it's got to be the players, and then you just move forward. This past year we had a extremely tough loss against LSU. We were up by 20 points, and we lost on the road, and there's a lot of adversity. And I was really proud of our staff and our players. Showed a lot of maturity to put that behind them because we were dodging a lot of things, and then we got on a roll, and I think we won 5 or 6 in a row after that. But you got to truly put it behind you because there's nothing you can do about it then.
Yeah. How fast do you do that?
We play on a Saturday. I've kind of got the 24-hour rule that, with 24 hours, hey, we're going to watch the film. We're going to see how we can improve. We're going to see the mistakes we made. It's real. When you're hurting, you're hurting.
Right.
And so we wake up on Monday, and that deal's done. And the thing about college football, it's not just adversity. Sometimes it's hard on the big wins.
That was my next question. Yeah, how do you deal with that?
It works. Sometimes it's harder to put a big win behind, and I think you got to do the same thing. And, I've always been one of those guys that you got to be really upfront and honest with your players. And so that's our approach, and we put it out there, and here's what we got to do. And you got to let them know that to be as good as we need to be, we got to put it behind us. Not only by talking about it, we'll talk about it at the end of the year.
Yeah. I think I heard you turned off your social media last season. Is that right? And are you going to do that again? Tell me about that.
Yeah, that's kind of one. Of course, social media recruiting is very important.
Sure.
But really, I wanted to make sure that I was very focused and wasn't distracted, because social media can be a distraction. It's a habit. It's addictive. You see everybody on their phone, and just one of those things from a head coach's standpoint, I felt like I could be my best for our team by doing that.
And so are you doing that again? Is that a process you're going to deploy?
It is a possibility. I'm not sitting here today telling you 100%, but it could happen.
Sure. What about with your staff or your guys? I mean, I know coaches that really press for their guys to do the same. I know it's tough, but how do you teach your guys how to deal with it?
I think each coach of my staff is different, and some can do a couple things at once better. And so I think it's more of an individual standpoint. Of course, the big thing with recruiting, and recruiting's real.
Sure.
In our league and where we're at, recruiting's our livelihood. So, that balance that goes with that, is real.
Sure. When you think about, you've sat in a ton of living rooms, right? Talking to kids and families. And I know inside of those conversations, you're trying to get an ideal teammate, right? You're trying to get a guy that cares more about the team than probably just himself, of course. What are some of the top 2 or 3 things that you look for when you're putting a guy on your team?
Yeah, I think probably the word character would come out first. The way I would see that is, you just said it, somebody that cares about the team more than themselves. This recruiting, it can really, this day and time can, distort things. But there's nothing better than a great teammate that will do what's best for the team, other than himself, and understand the better the team does, the more awards come. But, the work ethic and being a great teammate, because, we're going to recruit very talented young men. You can turn on the film and you can see where that guy's talented. But then we like to take it the next step where, we believe in talent plus character plus work ethic really equals championship.
So you sat in a living room with a guy that's a total stud, but you don't see those things and you take a pass.
Yeah, I'm real big on getting in front of people and getting a feel. Sure. And making sure that they will fit within our culture and within our team. I don't want to ever bring anybody in that's not going to fit. I don't care how talented they are. And that's what I believe in, because, I make a commitment to all of our parents' players that we're not going to bring in knuckleheads. You come to Auburn, you're not going to be surrounded with knuckleheads. Right. We're going to make sure that we're going to bring in teammates that truly care about their future, not just the football aspect, but the life aspect, getting a degree and everything that goes with that.
Sure.
And so it usually by the time I get in a living room, I already know the answers to that.
So, Coach, we end with a rapid-fire segment where I'm going to just fire you with a half dozen questions and just tell me what comes up for you. Is that cool?
Okay.
Are you in? All right. So, one word to describe you.
Focused.
Awesome. What's your morning routine? How do you start your day?
Start my day with a devotion, about a 5 to 10 minute devotion, and then I get going.
Who's been the greatest influence on your coaching career?
It's a high school coach, or two or three high school coaches in the state of Arkansas had the biggest impact on my coaching career.
What's your favorite thing to do? Now you're a grandpa, right? So I kind of think I know the answer, but outside of football.
Yeah, it used to be play golf when I coached high school. Now it's spend time with my family.
Sure. So, Coach, the show's called Game Changers. So kind of one last question. Who's a game changer that has inspired you in your life, and why?
Probably, I've had, it's hard for me just to put one, okay? Mm-hmm. But, there's a couple coaches as far as I wanted to model my career after. Tom Landry was a guy that I grew up a Dallas Cowboy fan. He was a Christian coach. He was professional. Tom Osborne at Nebraska, a Christian coach, professional. Both those guys won. So probably just the example that they gave me of what a Christian coach, successful Christian coach looks like. And I just know that really made a huge impact on me in the coaching world.
Sure. God, that's great. I mentioned before we came on, we connected at the Boys and Girls Clubs Youth of the Year event. And tell folks at what Boys and Girls Clubs, how it influenced your life. We have that, board in common. That charity certainly is both close to both of our hearts.
Yeah, I grew up in Fort Smith, Arkansas, in Evans Boys Club. I grew up playing every sport and really all the way throughout high school. And I guess when I was a sophomore in high school, I started coaching fifth grade soccer, fifth grade baseball, basketball, and that's really where my coaching career really developed. And they just gave me a great foundation. And so I've got a lot of respect for the Boys and Girls Clubs around the country and what they do and the influence they have on young people, which was greatly influenced, with my life growing up and really even my career.
Sure. Yeah, no, when they walk through those blue doors, right?
Yeah.
Things become possible. It's awesome.
That's right.
Hey, Coach, thanks so much, and wishing you nothing but the best this season, man.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, as always, for listening to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. There you can listen to previous episodes and leave us a review, which helps other people find out about the show. For more about me, visit mollyfletcher.com. Until next time, stay curious and be bold.